Well, yeah, I mean, I think Mogwai are a Scottish band who are obviously very well established and successful. Their music gets used a lot in film and TV and even adverts and so on. But in terms of placing songs, I know Frightened Rabbit have had huge success in the States, being put into kind of teen dramas and, Grey's Anatomy and all that kind of stuff. Same with We Were Promised Jetpacks. More recently, I've heard Zoe Van Gogh and various sort of relatively small bands from Glasgow being placed in TV programs, and actually Over the Wall are providing the theme tune to Burniston, which is pretty good. So it's not impossible for smaller bands to be able to place their music in there, but I suppose it's really with the aid of a company more than anything else. Is it like, if a band wants to do successfully on the gig circuit, they kind of need a live agent? If they want to get, pushed into film and so on, do they need a company behind them or a really active publisher?
Don't necessarily need it, but obviously it's helpful. It's getting the music to the right person. As Malcolm was saying, it's really useful when he feeds the director of whatever project he's working on the music, even as it's still being shot. It means that as soon as it's in getting edited and chopped up from the very start, they're not hearing any temp music, they're only hearing his music, which is brilliant. It means all the execs that are watching this only ever see it to Malcolm's music, therefore that's what's in their head, that's what they want. They can't envision this with any other kind of soundtrack to it. So which is brilliant. And it's similarly, if we can straight away feed to music supervisor we're working with lots of different band tracks, if they start using that effectively as temp music, they get to really love it, and they're like, oh yeah, look, give us that one, can we get that? And you're like, yeah, but we can, because we've already kind of cleared it for you effectively. So yeah, you can get your music to these people, but it's helpful using a company like us who can
representation.
Yeah, try and push it to the right people.
Okay, killer question. How much do you get paid? I mean, just let's have some ballpark figures of placing a track in a film soundtrack, placing a track in a TV soundtrack, from the lowest unsigned through to U2, Jay-Z, the Beatles, etc., etc. I mean, what are the kind of price structures? Because that's what they want to know. How much do I get if I get my tune in a program?
In a program, it's a bit different, purely because it's treated as a soundtrack. So your song is within a larger soundtrack, which might involve other people's songs, it might involve bespoke music. So it's kind of treated as a package together. Advertising, totally different ballgame, and that is really, really good place for money, because it's a really short hit, it's a 30-second ad, it's only got your track on it. And I just want to, while I remember, something that Eleanor said about, not having music that combats against the visuals. For people who have got tracks that, want to give them over to try and get them placed, it's really, really helpful, which a lot of bands just don't think about, having an instrumental version of your track. Because, yeah, your lyrics might be great, but they might say something a little bit, which the brand are a bit, dodgy on, or, it'd be nicer if there's a bit of space because they want to say a tagline here. And it's, it's piddly things that, once you've done the track, maybe 3 years ago, you might not have the stems, you might not be able to remix in quite the same way. So it's probably something, while you're there, dip the vocals, run off a version with nothing. It really used.
Well, I was doing a talk to some students yesterday, and Jamie Gilmore, who manages Over the Wall and We Were Promised Jetpacks, actually, he's sourcing sync deals, as they get called, with TV and film. And that's exactly one of the pieces of advice he gave to people as well. So if you are making tunes, I mean, it could be 3-minute pop songs or whatever. If you think, you know what, the music of this tune, actually, I could hear this in a an advert or whatever, yeah, do a non-vocal version. If your music is like 10 minutes long, if the tunes are all post-rock epics or whatever, and you're trying to get them played on the radio or maybe featured in films and so on, it might be worth doing an edit you're happy with that clocks in at 2 or 3 minutes, just so that people don't have to sit through the full 10 minutes to get the gist of it. All of these little tricks, I think, are useful, at least when people are going through tons and tons of different pieces of music.
Definitely. I mean, we've got a guy in New York who blatantly says, I listened to the first 10 seconds. Because if he didn't, he wouldn't get through everything that was sent to him. So you're like, right, well, in that case, I'll probably take your track and I'll edit it. But if you can do that before it gets to me, even better, because at least I know that, yeah, it's one less thing for me to do, and also that you're happy with what I'm eventually sending.
Okay, I still haven't got an answer though yet.
Okay,
how much do you get paid? I mean, I just want rough ballparks. Like let's say an advert, a 30-second advert, unsigned band, not published, not signed. What are they looking at?
Okay, I'll give you an example. US advert, we would say nationwide, but obviously it's different markets in the US. So say a large department store brand, 30-second advert, kind of rock and roll style track, the band walks away with £30,000.
Sellouts.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I used to believe as well, and I still kind of believe it. But I mean, it's difficult to.
It's difficult to. Well, the thing is,
difficult to turn that down, isn't it?
And especially if it's a brand that you're not got an emotional problem to be, so it's not, saying, oh, we're putting this in a Tampax ad, are you cool with that? It's something that, oh yeah, that's quite kudos to it. It's a track you've already done 2 years ago that, was maybe on your last album that you're not really doing anything with. These guys like it and they want to just give you money for old rope. Who's going to say no?
And it's great publicity as well, isn't it? Fantastic publicity.
Malcolm, I know it's very rude of me to ask you how much you get paid, pal. But could you give some ballpark figures as to as a composer? Obviously, you're very well respected and you work across all mediums. What kind of ballpark figures are we talking in terms of doing a show soundtrack, a half hour, an hour program?
On the way here, I phoned my agent and asked that exact question in terms of typical values. So obviously I'm not going to say what I earn for each show, but so her answer was that for a TV documentary going out, in the prime time between 6 and midnight, a minimum is about £3,000 for a documentary episode. In a sense, it doesn't matter whether
that's what, half an hour,
half an hour or an hour. Really, it doesn't really matter. That's a kind of starting place for. So if you're doing a series of 6, obviously you're multiplying that, and then it could maybe go up to 5,000 or 6,000, or it might just go higher if you have to hire an orchestra, because sometimes you've got to pay for musicians out of the fee you get, rather than that being separate. So, but I think about £3,000 starting price. And to be honest, I relate to that very strongly in that it's hard to do anything for less, because for every project I do, even though it's a 10-minute film or an hour episode, there's a big overhead in loading the media, in handling the media, and delivering it back in a highly technical way, and dealing with people. If there's less money than that, you think, well, maybe I'll do something else instead.
Because there's a lot more interference now, Malc, isn't there, in telly? There are a lot more executives, and so there's a lot of people making decisions. So often you have to rewrite. I mean, with Mountains, for instance, you had to do the title music, didn't you? Because there's so many different bureaucratic levels of people involved.
Yeah, that's right. You just got to be prepared for that. Some shows you're working on and almost nothing gets changed. I always overscore for the director if they want it. If they're short of time and it's a documentary, I'll say to them, look, I'm going to score the whole thing because you haven't got time to come and listen to each individual cue. And in one case, all the music stayed in. So for me, there was too much music in the documentary. It was great for PRS. So that's the documentary stuff. For I suppose for drama, and again, it's the same type of drama I'm talking about, between 6 and 9 in the evening on the main channels. A starting price for that would be around 5,000 and then going up to 10. Again, you can get less or more, and remember that caveat that sometimes you're expected to pay for musicians, which can work very well for you if you yourself are a musician. There's some strange budget things happens. I'm sure you'll say as well, where I'm suddenly paid for being a musician and a recording engineer.
And also an orchestrator and also a conductor. And you're like, this is quite good. I'm getting 5 paychecks. That's not bad. Yeah.
I'm sure you're talking to the Musicians Union representatives who are here. I'm not sure if Nigel's... No, he's on the toilet. There are people here who will be able to talk you through the logistics and the legal side of how many times you can pay yourself, basically. Now, before we came out and did the panel, we were talking about the fact that unsigned bands, unpublished bands, are being slightly perhaps taken advantage of in the way that TV companies or program makers are saying, yeah, we'll use your track. We love your track. We'll use it. We want to use it in this sequence here, in this sequence there, blah, 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 but we're not going to pay you. But the PRS will be fantastic. Is this, Eleanor, you were talking about this a little bit as well. Is this more common?
I've done so many different kind of deals. I mean, obviously my motivation is that I want the best for the film that I'm working on. And I'm told what budget. I mean, for instance, the one I just did with Paul, there was no budget for anything. I mean, it was basically a group of people that were very committed to the script that did it. But what you're also imagining is that it's going to go all over the world. It's going to go to film festivals. It's a kind of rom-com with erotic cake, so we imagine people might be quite interested in that, so you know so that people buy in because they buy in for different things. Like if it's not a genre you've worked in before as a musician, like it's a comedy, and you haven't scored anything like that before, it's best to do it maybe in a situation like that where the stakes aren't incredibly high, and then you've got it as a kind of showreel calling card, rather than actually doing it in a very highly exposed situation. I also just made a comedy pilot, and that's another really good thing to get into is pilots and short films because basically the filmmakers are young and you imagine they're going to go on to have more of a lucrative career, and if you're around at the beginning they're going to keep coming back to you. But also pilots, comedy pilots, drama pilots, if you can get in for the title music there, if that pilot comes off, then that's you got the title music kind of package. And again, the comedy pilot I did, it was an opt-out. It didn't have much of a budget, and the composer approached me and asked if he could write the title music for nothing, on the proviso that actually if it did go out, then obviously he's going to make really quite a lot of money.
So it's almost like the sort of work experience idea that if you work for free for long enough for a certain company or an organisation, they'll hopefully give you a job at the end of the when the money becomes available or a post becomes available. Is that the way you're
well, I think it builds up obviously the fact is that you're building up a relationship, a creative relationship, an artistic relationship, and as those people develop, and that's why it's quite good to get people at the short film stage.
I was just going to say something to you next to you, but you've got to go, have you?
Yeah, so sorry, I have to go. Yeah,
okay, just quickly, do you see more unsigned bands being taken advantage of and giving away their music to TV and film for free?
I don't know really about that. I think that obviously you can say no. I think if there is a PRS element, which presumably you do get that, that's something to take into consideration. But I think it's a tricky one. I think Malcolm was saying, basically it's just times are changing so quickly that I think some people, it's not that they're necessarily taking advantage, but I think there's a value to music, and that I worked for a TV company for a while, and they were definitely quite cheeky in wanting not to pay groups, which actually, I always encouraged them to pay when they could. But
yeah, well, it just seems that there are less and less income streams for bands these days, and they're earning less and less money from the normal legitimate kind of playing gigs and releasing records, that placing your music in films and TV programs and adverts is one place to earn a few quid. And now these people are sort of saying, if you give us the track for free, is this something, Hugh, if you need to fly,
okay. Thanks so
fly
much
away. Let's hear it for Hugh before he goes.